The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome and thank you for attending today's session of LexBee's eDiscovery webinar series, Top 10 Mistakes to Avoid When Creating Productions, presented by LexBee Principal Gene Albert, discussing how you can steer clear of common production problems before they have a chance to obstruct the case. Our eDiscovery webinar series covers a wide range of topics related to new eDiscovery and litigation document management technologies. Today's webinar should last about 20 to 30 minutes and will have a URL to access a recorded version of the presentation available to anyone who registered later this week. To give you a brief overview of our focus at LexBee, we develop and implement technology that helps legal professionals meet tight discovery deadlines regardless of the amount of data in their case, without breaking the bank. We offer high-speed ESI processing and conversion services in addition to our web-based review tool, LexBee Discovery Platform. If during our webinar there are any questions that you have or any technical issues being experienced, please email them to webinars@lexbee.com. Before I hand things over, let me tell you a bit about Gene. As mentioned, Gene is a principal and co-founder at LexBee and has a wealth of experience consulting on large-scale e-discovery matters. Gene has also frequently contributed to academic papers and commentary on a variety of e-discovery and litigation technology topics. He's also an experienced attorney working as in-house counsel as well as in private practice, with experience leading software ventures in several fields. With that, here's Gene with the top 10 mistakes to avoid when creating productions.
Great. Thank you, Stu, and thanks everybody for attending. This is a really important and practical subject that comes up a lot that people have questions about, so we wanted to go through and just hit some of the points that come up to give you some road signs of things to avoid and how to deal with them in your practice. So here's the agenda of the things we're going to go over today, and these are all things we see regularly come up in questions that clients have. We'll just jump right into it. And then as we go through this, if you have any questions or anything, please email us or let us know now or later. We'd love to address them and help you. One of the issues is not being aware of the rules and just how it works. And there can be three levels. There's the federal rules, there's state and local. At the federal rules, the way it works on productions for electronic evidence, electronic stored information, ESI, that if there's no agreement, then requires that the ESI be provided in a form as which it's ordinarily maintained or a form that is reasonably usable. There's some litigation around that, but as to what that can be, but that's generally going to be the native versions of files for electronic stored information. Then if one party requests a specific form of documents and there's no objection, then the receiving party will be bound by the requested form of production. So you want to watch these requests when they come in as the producing party, because if there's a request and you don't like it, it's expensive, and you don't object to it, they have a hard time getting out of that later. Then third, if there's a specific request with an objection, then the requesting party, if the requesting party specifies a different form, the producing party can object and propose its own form. So that's kind of the basic mechanism for how this stuff goes in discovery. There are state laws have many, are similar to federal rules, with some changes, and also federal courts may have local rules specifying forms of production, and in some areas like IP litigation and stuff, the courts are fairly active in having specific local rules, so you want to check those out too if you're in a particular court. Next point I wanted to bring up was a mistake of neglecting to match the review request with your review approach. So when someone is doing a litigation review, there are a couple factors here. One is what, and you want to match these. So you want to match the size of how you're going to do your review, and then also what tools you're going to use, and make sure that the requested documents are coming in a form that you can use. And this is an issue that people can get into, have problems with. So there are several different ways that one can review. One is a litigation review application like LexB. There are others, of course, as well. And these are specialty software programs that are designed to organize, search code, and produce large data sets. It can be used with small ones as well. Some review litigation applications work best with only some data types. So some can only work with TIFF, with load files, which we'll discuss in a minute. Others can work with different types. Some can load native files directly. Some of them have to be processed ahead of time and require pre-processing and conversion. So you'd want to know exactly the capabilities of your tools and what they can do to make sure that the request comes in if you're going to work in a litigation review application. And those are often a good idea in all cases because they're specially designed for litigation, but they become particularly necessary when you get into very large litigation reviews, documents more than can be handled on whatever other system must be used, such as a local computer. Some people are taking particularly smaller data sets and they'll review in directly on a local computer, and they'll take emails and look at them in Outlook and native files and look at them on the local computer. This can work for small ones and be cost effective, although that can be certainly slower, and there can be issues being able to effectively search and work with the data, but that's done a lot for small amounts of data, under a gig or two. A lot of people like to review in PDF, and that have things converted into PDF, and they'll work on it just locally with Acrobat or other tools on their computer without a litigation review application. Again, that can work well in smaller sets, and may have some disadvantages and some advantages to simplicity and familiarity. And the important thing here is not particularly which one you use, but just know what you're going to use ahead of time and match it, and make sure your production request is fitting with what you need. It may be hard to go back and change that later. Third mistake we want to discuss is not knowing common file deliverables and productions, and kind of fits back into number 2, how they work. And we've got several slides here that talk about these. The first point is what we call native file types, and that's the file as designated in the original application used to create it. So for Microsoft Word, that would be the native application. For a DOC or DOCX Word file, that would be the native file for that. Advantages of working with native files is that's the most accurate approximation of what the custodian, and the custodian is the person that has the electronic stored information, the ESI, in his or her possession. You don't have much file expansion. All of the metadata, and the metadata is information about the file that's embedded in the native file, such as when it was last opened, when it was created, that sort of thing, which can be important. That's all available in the native file. The disadvantages are several as well. One is you need the application for all file types, and that may not be, for all reviewers, that may not be a problem with common ones like Word, but that can get complex when you have architectural drawings or other things that you need specialty programs for, and everybody would need software and licenses. So often it's better to convert and use those. Also, there's often reason to have the page numbers for bait stamping and other purposes for native files, and you don't have those consistently if they haven't been paginated out into virtually printed into a PDF or a TIFF file. So that can be an issue. And for the native files, often some processing is still required. Email attachments will be within emails. There can be things within container archive files like zips and wars that need to be expanded and logged. So usually some amount of processing is needed for a native review, or it can cause difficulties. Native is often produced in addition to other formats. So it's very common to have at least Excel files and often PowerPoints produced natively, sometimes many others as well. And another note with native file types is it can increase privilege review issues because it's often harder to search and accurately search native file types for privilege issues. So there's and they can be embedded within other files and such. So often the amount of processing and conversion of other file types is helpful for doing an accurate and effective privilege review. Near natives, we use that to determine files that haven't been converted into a PDF or an image like a TIFF, but aren't in their original form. So a common example of that is structured databases could be converted into a reviewable type like Excel. For example, if you had an accounting program in QuickBooks or Peachtree, you wouldn't want people to try to review that in the original application probably, and instead reports would be specified, data would be pulled out, data dumps into Excel, or specialty reports run, and then those would be reviewed. And to the extent they go into an Excel, I call that near native. And they usually need to be converted by specialists with subject matter expertise, usually as needed, and one knows what they're looking for in the databases because it's very difficult to look at databases directly. Third type is what we'll call rendered HTML, and some review programs take native and they make them into a type of a web page to look at it. This is less expansion than the TIFFs that we'll discuss later, which have been used a lot. And that can be a rough approximation of the document for review. The disadvantage is they can't be dates or controlled stamped as part of the document on the page because they're not paginated out. But these are used by some programs. PDF is another common file type that where natives will be converted to PDFs. The number of advantages here: they're familiar and easy to use. They're independent. PDF stands for portable document format, so they can be used with anybody that has Acrobat or a number of other viewers. So it doesn't require a review program. They can be page level date stamped, and they're designed to retain color, and they expand less than converting into an image, a TIFF. And I'll mention TIFFs in a minute. That's their disadvantages are that some review platforms don't support these well, and it's a complex. The PDF is a complex format, can do many things, but because of that, they can corrupt more easily than some other files, depending on how they're converted. There's also a number of different types of PDFs that are fairly transparent to the user, but are made different ways, and those they have different capacities. So it's good to know this, at least in general terms. The first type is what we call text-based TIFFs, and these have been converted from native, and they retain the original text and formatting of the native and are searchable. Then there are image-type PDFs. These have been scanned, generally, or made into an image, and they're not searchable unless OCR has been applied. So as image only, they're not searchable. Then the next is text under image. This is the image only PDFs that OCR has been applied as a text layer within the file. And then the last type is something that's called an Adobe Portfolio type, and this is done by Acrobat, and they a number of different files have been embedded inside of a PDF, not converted necessarily. So these often must be extracted to be fully searchable and usable. But these are common in productions and deliveries as well. And then the last is TIFF with text. TIFFs are images like a picture of a document, usually single-paged and converted or scanned. This was a traditional review format from the earliest litigation review programs and predates the PDF specification. This is still required on some platforms, particularly the older platforms, and it's a bitmap file type, which means that if you were to look very closely with it, it's dots at the bottom. It's an image and doesn't have text embedded in the file as does a PDF. And it's viewable with an image-based viewer. TIFF is also still used for faxes. So if you receive a fax on a fax machine, if it's sent by email, that's a TIFF image. Disadvantage, they're cumbersome by modern standards, and they require separate text files and load files to use. And we'll discuss the load files, but a separate text file of all the text, either extracted or PDF or OCR, excuse me, from the file. It requires a review platform to pull together the text, the load file, and the image to view. So they're not easy to view if you get them outside of a review platform. Creating the TIFFs create some substantial expansion from what the natives would be, usually 3 to 5 times that, sometimes much larger. So Excel files, text files will often expand quite a bit. From what it would be on size. And the TIFF specification, the original one, doesn't have has no color, and so you lose color. There are ways that systems work around that by having JPEGs or other images, but that can be an issue. Also, they're created off of native files through a print process, a virtual print process, so they may lose things that wouldn't come out on a printer, which would be hidden sheets and Excels, hidden portions of file, things that are outside of select print screenings. Some notes on that: these are structured usually as one image and one text file per page, with a control number or Bates number to identify them. And then an important thing of these TIFFs are that document breaks and associated metadata are stored in load files. These are sometimes can be corrupted, so there can be issues with that. So these are strange-looking beasts if you haven't seen one before, but then once you know how they work, they're more familiar. And the last type of production, which is really not a new type, but just a combination of these others, is what we call blended production. We do this in LexB to give multiple flexibility, where we allow, we provide the native PDF and TIFF text with multiple load files. And the advantage of this is that it gives control back to the producing party to decide how much they want to give. If they want to give PDFs, if they want to do, or TIFFs, if you want to have natives on all or some file formats, it's within your control of how much to do that. And we found that it lessens format discussions and delays, and that we've got everything that most people could want. And you also get the PDFs, which are available for easy transfer even outside of a litigation review platform. And on the right, it kind of shows how we pull that out with the different folders for the different types. Let's talk a little bit about what a load file is. This is a structured text or database type file that references the files and associates metadata and other information for use inside a litigation database review system. So different things can be included in these load files. Email metadata, sender, receiver, to, from, for that and for documents as well. Document breaks. This is very important for the single-page TIFFs, because there's nothing in the TIFF itself that says since it's page-oriented, of when one document stops and another one starts. Email family associations. This is important too, because when you're reviewing in a litigation review system, you want to look at the attachments and the emails both separate and grouped together. So these family breaks need to be included as part of the database. And also we'll review multiple versions of a file. So there could be a TIFF or a PDF and the native and the text version of it, and you want to be able to go back and forth. So these need to be associated within the database. There are several common formats that are out there and that are used by different programs, and most programs can import different ones. There's a DAT, it's called a DAT file, and that's used by concordance or entail relativity. There's a DII used by summation. There's an LFP used by iPro system, and then the LXP one can load into these other ones, but we also produce an Excel version for easier use. And productions can include multiple file formats, often do, so that different systems can use them. And let's look at some load files. This is a LXP load file, this is an Excel file that we've taken images from, but you can see the columns and fields, and it shows information in there showing the beginning and ending document, the attachments, and other metadata to, from, paths, etc. that would be part of this load file that you could look at in an Excel spreadsheet, and then also it pulls it in and associates it with the file. And this has been taken out of the email, which is a screen cap at the top. So you see how this metadata pulls out when it goes into the load file. This is the same data here, and this is a concordance DAT file used by a number of systems, and it's a little bit harder file to look at and read, but if you look closely, you can see it's the same information here, and it's separated with what are called field delimiters that are highlighted there on the right, and these are used in some systems, and you would find this with a DAT extension on a production. This is a DII that's used with summation products, and they use instead what are called field tokens, but again, this is exactly the same data that was in the other two that we just looked at. So some nerdy detail there, but that's how this stuff works. Next production mistake is missing the opportunity to use your meet and confer meeting. Meet and confer refers to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 26 that requires that the parties meet and confer 21 days before the scheduling conference with the judge or magistrate, and the scheduling conference must occur within 120 days after filing. It's Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 16. This and the things, there are things that should be done at the meet and confer. Discuss preservation of electronic stored information, developing a proposed discovery plan, submitting to the court a written report outlining the plan, and it assumes that the parties are collaborating in good faith. Sometimes more actual or more aspirational than actual. Can it be helpful? Well, you know, it often can be helpful. It just really depends on the parties. It can also be a waste of time and can sort of get one into trouble if not handled properly. What can you do? One is before the conference to identify the custodians relevant to your production and your opponents. The custodians would be the persons that are subject matters of litigation that have electronic stored information in their possession that's been collected. Map out the ESI, gigabytes that you expect to produce, so you know where it is, what it is, and you start to get some ideas of what this is going to cost. Be able to discuss which ESI is not reasonably accessible. There's different rules, may not need to produce at all, or there may be cost shifting for ESI that's not reasonably accessible. Have proposed keyword searches if you plan to use those to discuss with opponents, and know what form of production you prefer in your load file requirements. At the conference, it is often a good idea to have a technical representative from the client or an e-discovery vendor available to discuss the particularities of ESI and productions, and determine what review platform and review approach your opponent is going to be using and what form of production they'll request. At the conference, good idea to memorialize any agreements in an agreed order, and to document disagreements, and tips. Know what you're agreeing to. That's where people get themselves into trouble, is they've agreed to something and they didn't understand what they did at the time, and it ends up costing more than they anticipated or the client anticipated later. and most litigation in this area is involving interpreting what parties agreed to and they didn't realize they were agreeing to, and they're trying to get out of. Watch the time commitments, as technical issues will, can easily delay you in this area. Native productions are common, but can, increase, privilege review. Database and other structured and unusual data might need to be converted, and that can take time and have costs. So you want to focus on those database and unusual file type issues early on as well. Next, a common mistake is failing to request specific file types and metadata is needed. Many review applications require or work best with a paginated version for loading. That would be a TIFF or a PDF. They don't take natives. This allows review application independence, but there should be load files to allow the metadata to be associated back with these imaged view types. So file metadata, email time, sender, subject, date, and page breaks for TIFFs need to be included. So those should be asked for in the load files and the spec of the load file. And and if you're asking for TIFFs or PDFs, you probably want to ask for the natives. That is can be subject to dispute and litigation over whether they're going to be provided in different circumstances. But it's common to do that for at least some file types, and some attorneys battle this pretty regularly. Some of them give it pretty regularly for you. Depends on the case and the data and the experience of the practitioners. But some review applications, they'll actually include allow the natives to be input directly, and they'll convert to the format, or they can be loaded in with these paginated ones and associated. So you could look at a PDF version of a PowerPoint, but then get back to the original one as well, and see different aspects of the data. There might be some things that don't make it into print, so that is that can be important. Custodian tracking and deduplication is another area to look at. As ESI is being collected and associated, it's important to associate that with the individual custodian that came from, whose computer did it come off of, whose drive, as that is needed for a chain of custody and admissibility later on, and that can be a real bear to go back and try to track that down if it wasn't gathered that way in the first place. Garbage in, garbage out. A related point is deduplication. There, in modern litigation, there's often many versions of the same email that can be pulled from different people's mailboxes and backup stores and things such as that. And it's common to get out the exact duplicates of files, and there's a number of electronic ways that can be done. There's a couple of different types of deduplication. Usually there's what's called vertical deduplication, where it's done within each custodian set, as often early on you don't know which custodians may actually end up in the litigation or even be produced. There's also what's called horizontal deduplication that gets rid of multiple versions that are in different from different custodians. So in a horizontal deduplication, only one version would be kept between custodians, pluses and minuses of each one, but often vertical deduplication is done to allow custodian independence throughout the discovery. Next point is not addressing placeholders, databases, unusual file types. The databases we talked a little bit about before, that those should be looked at early, and then often since for conversion into an intermediate file type for review. Unconverted files is as part of production and review when files are converted from natives into PDF or TIFF for review and bait stamping. Some will not convert, and these will be corrupted files, unsupported file types for conversions. Not everything can convert. Media files, sound files, video files, password protected files. Those will be flagged and single-page placeholders, which will be a PDF or TIFF file that will show that there was a file associated with that and can be date stamped. And then additional work can be done on those to go back and look at them, password collection, native file versions. So those should be looked at, which files did not convert as part of a QA/QC quality assurance quality control process to determine if additional work needs to be done on those, if those can include potentially responsive information. Another point is not having or having incomplete comprehensive discovery orders. So in large, complex, multi-party litigation, there's usually a comprehensive discovery order that sets forth a number of matters, the form of production, database handling, scanning specifications for hard documents, handling duplicates, dates numbering, review procedures, how privilege logs are going to be done, and a number of other matters. And in federal court, there can often be special masters that are appointed to handle any disputes related to these orders or interpretation of them. And it's good to look at these, and sometimes they're absolutely appropriate for one. One example that I put that's on the internet that's has come out of the Deepwater Horizon, and it's got quite detailed. So there's an example that you can take a look at if you are interested. 9 is handling redaction issues and traps. So privileged or sensitive information may need to be redacted prior to production. If native documents are being produced, this is an issue because the native documents need to be caught and withheld, as they can't be directly redacted. And it's just as a footnote to that, people do sometimes go into in a Excel sheet or Word document, pull documents out and redact it directly. That's not done very often, but I guess that is possible. Usually they're withheld. Redaction and is usually done on TIFF or PDF versions of documents. And for TIFFs, it's important that after redaction, the text be re-OCR'd to get rid of the redacted text as well. And in PDFs, there's a text layer that must be re-OCR'd. And where people have made mistakes in this area, they have not re-OCR'd it, or the systems haven't done that. So that's an important QC procedure to make sure you understand the system you're using, that it's set up to do that, and that be checked. And that native files should be withheld. Also container files, so zip files or parts of email files that have redacted or privileged information in there also need to be withheld, because they would if you do a native delivery, that would include those. So that's a reason to be careful with native deliveries and make sure you understand exactly what's been done with anything that you are delivering that's native. Here's just an example what redaction looks like in our system. So one goes in and does the redacted, and then once you create the redacted version, then that's the one that'll be used in the production, and that you can get back to the original and PDF and text versions of it. And then the redacted version is re-OCR'd. Number 10 is failing to apply near-dupe checks. Near-duplicate is a technology, very powerful technology for litigation that allows one to group documents that are similar but not exactly the same. So this could be a scanned document that's scanned different times, and OCR is a little bit different. It can be email responses to change. It can be versions of a document that was being marked up over time, and the computer program then will go in there and group these up together and let you look at them all at once. Very, very powerful tool in larger litigation reviews now, but it's very processing, computer intensive to do. There are several different uses. The first one is to group similar documents together, email threads, versions of the same document, and this allows mass tagging, consistent review and tagging, and it speeds review. The next use of it is privileged documents to reduce potential inadvertent release of privileged information. This allows one to do your privilege review and then go back and look at groupings with inconsistent privilege review documents to see if there are any that you caught some and didn't catch others that were similar. This is a great way to help assure that you're not letting privilege documents out the door and having a potential inadvertent waiver issue. And it also allows you to find similar versions of key documents. You find one document that's important, you find other ones that are very similar to it, even though not exactly the same. And then here's an example of a report for near dupe checks for privileged documents, and this is just showing groups that have inconsistently coded documents and allows the reviewers to go back in and catch the ones that were not consistently tagged to see if more privilege tagging needs to be done prior to production. And that is number 10. I will thank you for attending today. Please let us know if you have any questions, and I'll turn things back over to Stu.
Thank you, Gene. If any other questions do come up, please feel free to contact us at webinars@lexb.com or any of the contact information that you currently see on your screen. Thank you all very much for attending today's webinar, and we will follow up with a URL to access a recording of today's presentation and the slide deck as well to everyone who registered. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.